A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, a great adventure took place.
Talking Bird, a special edition.
Hello, and welcome to Talking Bird, the special edition, episode 58. I'm your host, Robert Zachary, along with my co-host, John Llewellyn. Hello, John.
Hello.
How goes it?
It goes and goes and goes, my man.
I know. It goes and it goes and it goes. Well, Star Wars fans, I think we're in fallow times for hot Star Wars news. But that being said, there's a lot of lukewarm Star Wars news.
Yeah,
and I think
I was gonna say, what, you're not excited about cable broadcast
TV
rights?
Well, I'm excited enough to talk about it because it's we
Yeah.
have to talk about something, and unless we wanted to go out and dig the depths of something from we probably should have done that before we started the show.
Yeah.
Hey, can we stop the show while we go back and read an entire book? I will say this. I totally forgot to mention before we started recording that a couple episodes ago, you had mentioned near the end that you had read The Perfect Weapon, which was the Bazine Natal thing. I went and read that yesterday myself. So in case we ran out of stuff to talk about. So maybe if we run out of stuff to talk about, we can touch on that again.
All right, we're teasing it for either later in the episode, or
we might not go anywhere
never.
Near that. But we've got
you'll have to listen to the episode and find out.
Exactly. I mean, just to give we've got we've got news about cable stuff with Star Wars, Jetpack talk, episode 8 talk. Poe Dameron number 6, which I think both of, just as a tease, I think both John and I enjoyed this one a little bit more than we've enjoyed some of the other ones. That and much, much more. But where are we at this right? How are you feeling right
so
now?
Let's start with episode 8 updates.
Okay, let's do that.
We have a couple of, just check in with some of the cast of episode 8. Adam Driver thinks it's good, or thinks the script is good. That's positive, I think.
That's effusive praise from Adam Driver.
Oh yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
Really good.
No, so he compared it to The Empire Strikes Back, not necessarily in the sense that it's darker necessarily, but in the sense that it's they explore things in more detail, but then it's at the same time they kind of widen the scope of everything, and it's a little vaguer. There's less of a endpoint that is in sight. He talked about working on, I assume he meant just kind of Star Wars in general, and being kind of nervous and not really sure how to deal with the whole scope of the entire enterprise, and being told and now I apologize to whichever one it isn't, but I can't remember if it's J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson, but telling him that okay, what, we're just gonna focus on one thing at a time, and we'll just deal with this little bit. Today we're doing this scene, and we'll just figure out how to make this scene work, and then we'll move on to the next scene. And to get him not to focus on oh my god, I'm making a Star Wars, and what if I don't know how this is going to work out. So that was a little interesting, hearing him kind of talk about that, because I don't think, some of the other actors they've interviewed and they've asked them about, specifically about like, oh, so what's it like working on like Star Wars now? But I don't know that they really asked him about that much when they were promoting Episode 7.
Yeah, he was.
So now he's sort of it's Adam Driver's turn, I guess, to talk about. Oh wow, like this is a huge endeavor, and there's a lot of moving parts to this.
I was thinking about this because you were talking behind the scenes stuff, and it just occurred to me. Have you, in your readings and research, have you seen any indications that J.J. Abrams had some issue with Daisy Ridley while they were filming The Force Awakens? Like that he was unhappy.
No, I don't think I've heard that.
So, and the reason I bring this up, and I probably shouldn't even give life to these rumors because it was totally like a clickbaity kind of YouTube video that I was watching, because it's like I'm always researching Star Wars on YouTube or whatever, watching toy breakdowns or whatever. So most of my suggestions are Star Wars related, and I got one of those things. I don't know the name of the company, and I probably shouldn't even promote them, but it's always like, 5 actors who hated their co-stars, or 5 actors who didn't get along with their thing, and they tell the obligatory thing about Bruce Willis and Kevin Smith on Cop Out, that they'd had some big issue, and that what's his face, the guy, Transformers guy, he'd fired
Michael Bay.
Shia
LaBeouf,
Michael Bay.
or Michael Bay.
Michael Bay had a falling out with the girl that was in the first 2 movies because she compared him to Hitler, and she, anyway. So then it came Daisy Ridley and J.J. Abrams. It's like, J.J. Abrams was so disappointed with Daisy Ridley's performance the first day on set that he called her out as being wooden and lifeless in front of the whole crew and cast. And that just does not seem like something that would happen.
Yeah,
because that's like not a set where it's like, some indie movie they're making in Albuquerque or something. I mean, people are going to talk if like, I just would wonder.
So 2 things on that. First, aren't they making another movie together now?
Yeah.
Like, she agreed to act in another J.J. Abrams movie. So whatever differences they might have had apparently aren't big enough to prevent that. But also, I mean, I think J.J. Abrams, I remember him, I can't remember what the context was, but he talked at one point, it might have been that conversation he had with, that sit down he had with Lawrence Kasdan or something. But, he talked about his own directing of the movie, and like he kind of over directed at some points, and he didn't name the actor specifically, but at the time I guessed it was Daisy Ridley, where, he would kind of micromanage their performance a little bit, and then after a while he realized, like, you know what, the first take was perfectly fine, like they did a great job, and then 8 takes later, like he's still trying to tweak things, and like, no, the first take was great, like just let it go.
Right. I mean, I think that's
so I wonder if that's kind of what they were referring to.
I wonder if it's like, and through the way things get interpreted, it's almost like playing what do they call it, mailbox or whatever, or post office, where somebody will tell you something and get distorted, and I don't know. I mean, clickbait is, I'm not saying they should ban it or anything, but it gets to be that point where it's like, it's one of the things on the internet that I fall for almost every time. Like somebody will say like, this Star Wars actor, never worked again. And you click on it, and then like, you have to click through 8 different things to find out that like, oh yeah, the kid that played, oh gosh, what's his name? The one they always talk about, the Anakin's little friend.
Oh, Kitster?
He's like, yeah, we all know Kitster quit acting after this. He was a little kid. What do you want? Yeah. Just before we get back into this, you probably didn't see the new South Park?
I did not. I have not seen South Park in many years.
Okay. Well, I watched it, and so I won't talk about it long, but I will say this, and I won't even spoil it for people. I will say that J.J. Abrams factors into this week's episode quite heavily, and there's a lot of little Star Wars kind of references to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a full-on parody. It's more of the idea. They and this is my interpretation, that they kind of take the wind out of the sails a little bit about the our culture's current obsession with nostalgia versus pushing things forward. It was very funny because it's like the whole story has nothing to do with Star Wars. It's just kind of a side thing where it's like they literally there's a little at some point a character brings out something called like member berries or something. There's these purple berries. And then they say little things like, "Gee, remember Chewbacca? Chewbacca's great." It's like that thing. Remember how great Star Wars was and the Empire and stuff? And it was just kind of like there's a lot else going on that episode I won't get into, but I just thought it was funny for people that are kind of, they like their Star Wars references and they have and they're not too precious about them. You might want to dip in there, but that's all I'll say about that. Because I know South Park.
Maybe I'll track that down.
South Park has kind of fallen out of the pantheon of cool. So
no, it's not even that I don't consider it cool. One, I don't have cable anymore, but I don't know.
I know.
It just stopped.
You don't have to apologize for nothing. You don't want to watch it. You don't want to watch it.
All right then. What were we talking about?
Sorry. We're talking about Adam Driver. I'm jumping around.
Right. So episode 8, he talked about how it's. I kind of get what he's saying here, but he talked about how Rian Johnson, he kept it kind of ambiguous and he didn't dumb it down for viewers, and it's like it's not. There's a difference between like leaving things unresolved or there's a difference between kind of resolving what you set in motion within the movie and dumbing things down. Like, and I am someone who doesn't mind if a movie doesn't explain everything to me within reason, right? There's some things in a movie need to be explained, right? Motivations and whatever else. Well, within a point, right? Because then if you have a character and you're not sure of their motivation, then that can be intriguing too, but it has to be handled correctly, et cetera, et cetera. So if a movie leaves something unresolved, I'm not completely dead set against it. But that's not the same thing as like thinking that your audience is intelligent, or equating that kind of equating that ambiguity with intelligence. I think is sort of dangerous, and it makes me a little. Not worried is too strong, but it's like, I hope they don't get overly precious with their like. I guess I'm just worried that episode 8 is going to be the one that like, the serious Star Wars fans love episode 8. Only dilettantes and children love episode 7 because that's just. Well, I'm just afraid it's going to come back around.
I totally know what you're saying.
All of these Star Wars fans defending episode 7. It's like, no, it's not just the same as episode 4. It's all of these other things. It's not just the same as before. And now, like 3 years from now or 4 years from now, it's going to turn back around and be like, well, no, episode 7 is. That's just essentially. Just watch A New Hope if you want that. Episode 8 is the real Star Wars movie for the next generation, and it's like, you just know something like that because episode 8 it's so ambiguous and so mysterious, and it leaves everything. It deepens the mystery and the universe, and it's like, Adam Driver has just already kind of set that in motion, and I get what he's talking about, but it's like I don't like equating those two things.
Well, I think that's the thing about I don't know much about Adam Driver as a human being,
right? But
as a professional actor, I know he kind of seems to cast that shadow of kind of, and now I'm paraphrasing again J.J. Abrams, who had worked with him. Is that he was kind of a Brando kind of guy. So I guess what that means is that, at least how I interpret that, is that means he's a tiny bit more method than probably his co-stars. I've seen interviews. He goes, I don't watch my own work.
Right. But yeah. Well,
and of course, being in a movie is the work to him. It's that kind of. He's the brooding kind of. He's probably a bit more if we had, if they had kind of done, let's say if they were doing the prequels now, there'd be a good chance that he'd probably be playing Anakin Skywalker.
Right.
It's that kind of thing where it's like maybe not. I mean, I don't know the choices of the way that,
right. No,
George
but you
made
can
his
see,
things, but that
you
would
can
be
see that kind of through line in the performance and style of.
Yeah. I mean, the thing you were talking about, it's like, I think people are very much have adopted this almost kind of ring theory of Star Wars, that the first one's going to be, exciting and throwing us into a new world, and the second one's going to be darker, and then the third one's going to get us all caught up, kind of thing, where it's like, it's the second movie in a trilogy, supposedly that's going to give the story more room to play. I mean, it's fun to be kind of obscure and whatnot, but even rewatching The Force Awakens, which I did watched it again last night. It does kind of like, motivation is not a big deal in that movie. It's like, you really don't understand the kind of what Kylo Ren's motivation really is. This idea that it's hinted at, and this idea that he wasn't partly
Han Solo was an absentee father, and that's why Kylo Ren killed Lor San Tekka or something.
Yeah, it was like that, and it's kind of like a thing like, oh, well, they kind of, all right, I don't really...
Spoiler alert, sorry everyone,
Lor
San Tekka dies in The Force Awakens. I'm sorry if I ruined that movie for you.
No, it's fine. All of a sudden I went off and I was starting thinking about it. It's like, I guess that is true. But it's, it's a weird kind of thing where it's like, they probably want to go deeper and darker, but it could be very easily make it a not very fun movie. And even in some ways, speaking of, I saw a little, like one of these little snippets on a thing where they're talking to Riz Ahmed, and he was like, Rogue One, it's really gritty. And who knows what that even means now. I honestly feel like if they probably found the grit dial and probably have tuned that down a lot. I don't know what version of the movie he's seen, I get the feeling it's not going to be as gritty. I was, anyway, I'm going to start going off in another direction.
No, but I mean, it's, there's a question of like, all right, so that's great if it's more intelligent or ambiguous, whatever, but like, is it going to be fun at all? Because even The Empire Strikes Back, I mean, it's definitely not, an uplifting movie, but there's still moments of like cool stuff happening.
A lot of humor.
There's humor in it. Lando is always fun. Yoda, the first scene before we know Yoda is Yoda, he's like making fun of Luke Skywalker. He's like, "Oh, what's the matter? You can't get your ship out." There are moments like that in there, and even though they're being chased by Darth Vader and it's supposed to be scary, right? Like the asteroid sequence is like really cool and kind of fun. So there are those moments in there, and with episode 7, we talked about how that was sort of one of the big reliefs, or one of the things we really liked about it was that it did have that sense of like fun and kind of joy from the characters, right? The characters seemed like they were enjoying what they were doing, and so I mean, thinking about Rian Johnson's work outside of Star Wars, like I don't know that I would necessarily call it fun.
No,
right? Like Brick, like the aspect of like, oh, this is kind of fun that these people are delivering old-timey dialogue, but the movie itself is not fun at all.
Right, it's dealing with some pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, and Looper, I haven't seen, but I can't imagine that it's like it would ever be described as a romp.
No. I never saw The Brothers Bloom. I think there's a lot more humor in The Brothers Bloom, and I think that's the
probably.
one I keep
don't know if it's any good though.
Yeah, have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
I was like, that's the one I never hear anybody talk about.
Right, exactly.
I think he made right after Brick, I guess. But
yeah, and so it's similar with Rogue One in that sense. It's like, all right, gritty and war movie, that's fine. Like, is any of this going to be fun at all? Because that's kind of important for making a Star Wars thing, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to be.
Like, it doesn't have to be relentlessly grim, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have made that weird kind of mental estimation because of obviously Han being captured and Luke losing his hand and the big, the I am your father thing. It's kind of, it does have a tendency to be always thought of so dark, but there are dark things, of course. It would be silly to ignore that, but yeah, the levity of the kind of the budding romance on which was budding at different points, but started to get solidifying in the asteroid, where it's just like this kind of weird proximity idea of like, I always wondered, like, how long were they inside of that slug, like a month or something? Were they all of a sudden kind of built on the romance there, or
right?
When did the real romancing become, or have I always been adding more depth to it than it really deserves, or something? But there's a levity to it, and an opportunity to kind of expand the universe a little bit. But I feel like it's not really. That kind of stuff, expanding the universe, isn't necessarily on their shoulders the way it used to be, because it feels like some of that heavy lifting gets taken care of by the ancillary work. So I always wonder if a director is like, well, we're not really, this is a story-driven thing, and we're not really, because it's like this note here having that Adam Driver likes the script or the film or whatever, but he's nervous about the scale of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of makes me wonder, is this going to be kind of a larger story? Because really Empire was more of an interpersonal kind of.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he was referring to the movie itself or just to like the fact that he was working on Star Wars, and Star Wars is just this like big old aircraft carrier floating through the ocean,
Right. Well, he needs to get used to it. It's like,
yeah.
It's kind of like, well,
to continue the metaphor, that ship sailed a while ago, buddy.
Well, I mean, I appreciate the idea that he goes, Adam Driver's this Brando character, and he's he doesn't watch his own performances. I mean, I don't listen to my own show except to make sure that the volumes are relatively equal, and not that I'm an artiste, but I mean, I understand a person being nervous about the work they're doing, but it's kind of like that all for this kind, where we're at with the fervor about fandom, this aw shucks kind of thing probably doesn't probably could be a turnoff for some people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and two, I wonder, John Williams, one of his interviews he did around the Phantom Menace, was talking about sort of this community of people who are involved in making Star Wars and were involved with it. I guess at that point you still had some people who worked on the original trilogy, Lauren Peterson and a lot of the effects crew, and some other folks who were still around, and now you have people who worked on the prequels and maybe even Return of the Jedi or something, who are still kind of around with this new group of movies. And Doug Chang's been there for 20 years at this point, or more than 20 years at this point. John Knoll's been there forever now. Even someone like Pablo Hidalgo, I think, has been working at Lucasfilm for like 15 years.
Actually, he said
or something
on this week's Star Wars show, he said 17 years.
17, that's what it was, right? So to have, right, which on the one hand, for like us fans, are like, oh great, there's this community of people who work on Star Wars, and you go to conventions and, oh yeah, John Knoll, I've been seeing him at conventions forever, or we know it's in good hands because these people, they've made their career in Star Wars, or at least in ILM or at Lucasfilm. Whereas for someone just coming in for the first time, like an actor or a new crew member or whomever it might be, a writer, I could see how that could be intimidating, that you have this whole community of people who kind of know what they're doing. And, on the one hand, you're like, okay, good. So there's this safety net. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, these people kind of all know how things were supposed to go. And I'm the one new kid at school who doesn't know the rhythms and how the schedule is. And so I don't want to make a mistake and, screw up this whole enterprise and throw off this thing that has been going for 40 years now. So I can see how that, for an actor coming in who, has this new role and is still creating who this character is, and it's not entirely clear like what is going to become of this character. Like I can see how that could be an intimidating environment in some ways.
Yeah,
or at least an environment that makes you nervous a little bit about building that new character.
Yeah, I mean, not to give him more to worry about. Not that he's listening to the show, but the idea, like, yeah, I don't know if I completely was sold on Kylo Ren as being a character. We were at the mall this weekend, and I went to the Disney store because they have a lot of Star Wars stuff now, because they kind of own Star Wars, and I was just seeing what's what, if there's anything cool, because there was like this weird prototype Boba Fett that I had seen in diecast, and I kind of was like, want one. I was like, oh, maybe they have one. And I'm looking, and but they were having some discounts and stuff, and they were selling like a ton of these Kylo Ren kind of statues or whatever. And I thought to myself, it was pretty cheap, and I was thinking, well, maybe I'll get one. And then I'm like, no, again, I'm trying to be more careful about memorabilia I buy and stuff. I don't want a bunch of stuff, but it's like, there's nothing about Kylo Ren that really, like, the kind of like his parentage notwithstanding, the idea is like, his handmade lightsaber with the thing, like I really expected kind of something, more menacing to him.
Yeah.
When really he did come off as, and maybe this is a little bit of, because it's like, Adam Driver is not allowed to, completely construct this role. He has to take the input of the people making the movie and the intent that they were doing. Is that, Kylo was read as a petulant teenager, and, he's actually considerably older than the rest of the new cast. Actually, no, he's a little bit younger than Oscar Isaac, but it just kind of came off like this kind of thing, and I'm kind of hoping that they will maybe rehab this character a little bit in the second movie, in a way that, I don't know how you do it though. It's like I said, I've hammered on this. Right. Like, I really feel like he shouldn't have revealed his face until that right before he killed Han Solo. But, whatever. I mean, you can't go back in time and change that. But
yeah,
it's almost like,
I mean,
no, go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that in some strange ways, Empire was the kind of the reboot of Darth Vader. In the, he was a henchman. He was definitely scary. He was capricious in his not so much in the New Hope. He wasn't willy-nilly strangling people. He strangles one dude, and he does it with his own hand.
Right.
But by Empire, he's kind of like killing people for ticking them off and whatnot. But that's kind of that's when Darth Vader became a full character. It's, a lot of the, A New Hope, you see a lot of bureaucracy. You see that they still follow a lot of the same kind of, at least in name, they follow a lot of the same concessions that even in the 70s, that, there's senators and there's generals and everybody's sitting around a big table and talking about it. And even though Vader's an incredibly powerful guy, even like people in the military feel perfectly comfortable shooting their mouth off at him. And then you get to get a taste of his menace. And I'm kind of wondering if maybe, they almost trying to recreate this with Hux and Kylo Ren and Snoke, and this kind of triumvirate of them arguing, Kylo Ren's concerns are more metaphysical, and Hux's is more military kind of thing, and they both keep coming to this Snoke, who we still don't know who he is, and I almost wonder if it's not even really that important at the end of the day. But it's almost that kind of idea, like maybe they should have sacrificed Hux as a character in the story.
Yeah.
Because then that would have given Kylo Ren kind of like, so now in this one, Kylo Ren he's running everything, kind of
right.
Like where you
because then what's Benicio del Toro gonna do?
Oh, do you think he's gonna be
to your point? It's not just that they're not getting rid of the multiple villains they had in Episode 7; they're adding villains as well. So, yeah, where does Kylo Ren fit in this? And is he someone we need to worry about, or are there like 3 other people where you're like, oh, they're the real dangers to the group?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like there's a lot of mystery with Kylo Ren, except for, what was the pivot point of this seduction? Because I was watching Force Awakens again, and that whole conversation between Han and Leia, which, as a quick aside, I'm kind of convinced that whole conversation between Han and Leia, where they talk about their failings with their son and stuff. I know this is going to sound weird. I feel like that entire scene, like half that scene was put together post filming, like using a digital thing, like that she's not actually acting with Harrison Ford, or they did the old Lucas thing where he goes, "Oh, I really like that take, where you do that thing with your hand in this take, and I really like the way he holds his face in this one. So let's just cut a line down the middle of it and sync it up." I don't think they were in this. I don't feel like I feel like I'm looking at like 2 actors not actually looking at each other, but that's almost conspiracy theory, and it's just something to do about the image quality changes, and it's a kind of like weird thing. If you watch like the way Harrison Ford's face reacts to some stuff, it's like it doesn't actually look like he's reacting to what she's saying. But
yeah, there's a little bit of a weird rhythm to that scene.
Yeah, but they keep talking like, "Oh, it was Snoke. He seduced him," and it's like that idea where it's like, okay, so I can kind of understand why people get very into this Snoke theory thing, and I agree with like what they're saying is that your Snoke theory sucks. The short version of that is that like, let's just find out. But it does kind of make you wonder that maybe they, in the interest of keeping the story going at a fast clip, they may have undersold Snoke as being like the whole thing about the First Order or whatnot. They kind of feel like the JV team compared to, I guess I think I've already said this. Because the way I was about ready to word it, I was like, like our president says about ISIS, they're like the JV team. I think I've said that already once, but it's that kind of like, I do kind of feel like, even though that the stormtroopers and stuff, I actually think are much more menacing. But so now they're they're the kill happy, murder an entire village without any kind of problem, except for Finn, obviously. But but then we got this weird thing, so they just kill people willy nilly, and then this is the movie where we show that there's actually people inside of them. It's like but they have feelings and they have friends, and it's like, oh, that's a weird thing. But it's this idea where it's like the real menace, I feel, are kind of like the kind of like that military industrial complex that is the First Order. It's like we don't quite know what the First Order is trying to do. Well, at least when the Force Awakens, they weren't really in the running of like, oh, well, they're going to be running things next week kind of thing. It's like, no, they were considered a very small organization that were in the outer rims, kind of pissing people off a lot. I think that's kind of the way they relate it when Poe Dameron gets pulled out of that shuttle and he looks at this Star Destroyer, and he's kind of shocked. And he has that look like, my God, this thing is enormous. Where am I? kind of thing. I didn't think that the First Order, had a fleet. Maybe I don't know.
Right.
Maybe that's kind of what. Maybe that's what they're trying to put forward, almost in the way that Bloodlines kind of underplay. Well, is very good about portraying the idea that the New Republic doesn't think the First Order is a threat because they're nothing. They just they're a couple ships, and then occasionally they show up on some planet and they steal money or fuel or equipment from some village, and there's nothing we're going to do about it. And really
right.
They were a sleeping giant all along, and now they've kind of come in. Maybe that's kind of what they mean by scale. Hopefully, I mean, that does fall in the idea of the Empire Strikes Back, where it's before they were a bureaucracy with a super weapon that they hadn't let people know. Then they go, hey, look, we've got this huge weapon, and then they lose the huge weapon, but they've already made that motion forward that, like, no, we're a dictatorship, or we're a totalitarian regime. Even though everybody knew that, like, yeah, they're pretty much, it's even in the original script, there was, I think there was some line Biggs had talked about, like, pretty soon they're going to take over some of the more expanded systems, and then we'll all just be tenants for the Empire or something like that, which might have been in the deleted Big scenes or in the radio drama. I can't remember. But yeah, maybe this is going to be kind of, hopefully, the rehabilitation of the First Order as being like something that's like feels scarier, even though they did destroy the entire New Republic army. So maybe I'm underselling how scary they really were.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we really don't know a whole lot about the First Order still. We got a little bit about their origins in the Bloodline novel, but like how it functions and how dangerous it is. I mean, the fact that they could destroy the government planet, or whatever you want to call that, Hosnian Prime, right? That certainly speaks to, like, all right, so they're pretty dangerous, I guess. But the day-to-day, like, do people on other planets care about the First Order or not? Or what does it look like? We saw the dropships and the troops on Jakku shooting up that village, but we don't see what the day-to-day, like, New Republic versus First Order life, what that looks like for ordinary people. Like, we haven't seen that. And I mean, maybe that is, I don't know, again, maybe weakness is too strong, but even in A New Hope and I guess maybe to a little more extent, Return of the Jedi, but particularly in The New Hope, like, you kind of got a sense of that, right? In the way that, when they showed Luke and Ben and the droids trying to sell the speeder, you kind of saw what it looked like with the stormtroopers setting up checkpoints all around Mos Eisley, and you did kind of get more of a sense of, like, oh, okay, this is the Empire is not just bad because they have Darth Vader and they are chasing down Princess Leia, but, like, they're also bad because of the way they treat ordinary civilians in this universe, and we haven't really gotten a sense of that yet with the new trilogy, and so maybe that's coming, maybe it's not. I don't know.
Yeah, and and it just occurred to me, and I apologize for the metaphor because I'm not. It's like this is probably something I should be thinking about more before I throw it out there, but it's almost like the Empire is the way it's depicted in the original trilogy is it's a central bureaucracy, military bureaucracy that radiates from a center location outwardly. It kind of feels like, at least that's the the extra material, the comic books and stuff. It's like, Coruscant is the Emperor's there, and everything radiates out from the central core, and they yes, in a place like Tatooine, which I guess is not considered a core world or whatever, it's in the middle of,
right.
In the prequels, it was supposedly controlled by the Hutts. I don't know what the status of it was in the original trilogy. but the idea that, the bureaucracy exists in a central location, and it as the further away you're away from the center, the less you are affected by it, but you're still expect that you're going to see troopers and like they're the military, they're the police, they're the thing. Whereas
and then you have places, like Cloud City where, at least before the events of Empire Strikes Back, like the Empire pretty much left them alone because they were too small of an operation to worry about. And so, there it's like, well, the Empire versus the Rebellion, that doesn't really affect people's day-to-day lives there.
Exactly. And then I think the First Order is almost kind of like the invert. Like they're actually almost seem to orientate from outside the center of existence, and they kind of work towards the core, which they ended up destroying the core. So it's kind of like, it's the kind of idea where it's like, militarily, you would think that like, okay, well, the Empire is almost like a nation state that keeps invading, smaller areas and adding to their power. Whereas, First Order is almost like an ideological or a small kind of militia kind of thing that's just kind of grabbing stuff, or the impetus behind him is for lack of a better term, a terrorist act, them destroying the core worlds.
Right.
And then the funny thing is that because it's Star Wars, that doesn't tend to have an ideological backing behind it, where it's like, you could, you can't make a direct correlation between like, oh, well, this is a very much like, what's going on in the world right now. Well, there's no ideology. They go, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like, oh, we're bad guys. It's like even Snoke isn't like, he just kind of wants Luke Skywalker out of the picture, because he knows that there's something about Luke Skywalker that's just because whatever happened when this second Jedi Academy or whatever went, the fact that Luke survived has been a real thorn in the side of Snoke for some reason. It's like, I can't do what I want to do until this guy is gone.
Right.
And we don't know what that is. Maybe it would have been nice to at least have an idea, like, why does he, I don't know if Snoke's a Force user, or, I mean, the implication is that he is, because he keeps telling, Kylo Ren he's going to finish his training, or he would like, bring me this Rey and maybe we can train her or something like that. It's the idea where they're just immediately like kind of replicating the old kind of Sith thing, but without saying the Sith. The idea like I need an apprentice, or maybe again, I would have liked a little bit more of like, I mean, are we going to get to know these Knights of Ren? I assume we are. I mean, the talk is that, I mean, there was an actor.
Well, are we going to find out who they are in a movie, or are we going to find out who they are in like a novel for young adults or something? I see. Where is that information going to come from?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I've heard little rumors here and there about what the climactic battle is going to be for episode 8, and I'm not going to talk about it for spoiler thing, but supposedly that I had heard that the Knights of Ren were going to feature in it, but I could be completely wrong. I mean, we are dealing with rumors, and it'll be interesting, because it's like, that almost makes me think, it's like, if there's going to be like, what are they like, there's going to be 9 Knights of Ren, is it going to be like, if they all have lightsabers or some kind of lightsaber-ish thing, it's like, how is Luke and Rey going to fight 9 people?
Right.
Or are they going to be like, everywhere they go, oh, there's another Knight of Ren chasing us, or damn those Knights of Ren. I don't know. It's
and are the other Knights of Ren actually any good at anything, or are they just like a collection of thugs who are easily dispatched?
Yeah, I mean, what happened to
them? Like, how imposing are they supposed? Like, they look imposing, but we have no real sense of like whether being a Knight of Ren actually means anything.
Right. I mean, they could be anything from, something that Snoke supplied to Kylo Ren, or they could be initiates at Luke's thing that all went, were corrupted by either Snoke again or Kylo Ren's or Ben Solo, his teachings or whatever. It's like some kind of Star Wars version. Did you ever see the movie Taps?
No.
It's this movie. It's this great movie from like '79 or something about teenage military kids going to a military academy, and it's like Sean Penn and Tom Cruise and Timothy Hutton. Like it's like their first breakout roles, and something happens and they take over the military and they basically become soldiers, this thing. And it's like they get into a real war with the bureaucracy. It's like, it could be something like that, where literally, Luke's own teachings set up these guys to kind of rebel against him, maybe because he's, they talked, Ben Kenobi had mentioned like, oh, thought I could train your father just as well as Yoda. Maybe Luke has a little bit of hubris, or, it's just the nature of teaching. It is like occasionally some of your students are going to go bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm heavy speculation mode.
Well, so while we're talking about episode 8, though, this is going to switch gears a little bit, but I think it gets to this thing that we're talking about, just like, we don't really know what to expect from this movie. So episode 8 has officially wrapped.
Right.
But Lupita Nyong'o apparently has not filmed her scenes yet. So does that mean Maz Kanata will not be in this movie, or does it mean that they filmed close-ups or one shots of the other actors who would be talking to her, and then they're just going to cut to Lupita Nyong'o as Maz Kanata saying a line, and then cut back to Khan saying, sorry, that's the one person it couldn't be. Cut back to Finn or someone saying a line, and then cut to Maz Kanata. How is this? How are they going to make this work? Or is Maz Kanata even going to be in this movie? What do you think?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I have my own personal opinion about it, but technologically, I don't know how much Lupita Nyong'o was actually on set for a lot of that Maz Kanata stuff. I almost feel like I know that there was certain sequences. Well, I guess she was, because I've seen pictures.
Yeah, probably a couple days.
But there's a woman.
But I certainly no longer than a week. I wouldn't.
There's a woman. Obviously, she's a woman of shorter stature, and you see her in the promotional video that was shown at Celebration 15, where she actually is in the Abu Dhabi desert. At least I think it's Abu Dhabi, and she plays the Gonk droid, the power droid.
Right.
And she goes, "Oh, I get to get inside this little guy and thing." And I think she had been on another podcast interviewed, and I think she was a stand-in for Lupita's character, where she would obviously play this on her knees or in a squat, and this woman is kind of short, so she would wear the balls and she would kind of block it for them. And I wonder if it's a scenario like that, or
to get the eye lines correct,
right? And then she's gonna go in and match it, because I mean, obviously Lupita Nyong'o's boom, her career is exploding right now, and if she's not gonna.
She has a lot of other things going on.
I doubt Maz Kanata's part is going to be as big, because they already kind of went out of their way to kind of she was supposed to be in the whole last third of the thing, and they kind of just wrote it out in this kind of, in a lot of ways, kind of a weak idea. Just go, I'll stay here kind of thing, where they go, okay, I'll stay here and do this thing. But I mean, there's been talk that she's going to have another bar or something, that she will be in the movie.
Yeah.
I kind of hope it's not going to be big. I'm not as into Maz Kanata as some people are, because I feel like she served a strange purpose in the film.
Yeah.
Because it was like she was an excuse for a lot of exposition, and without that exposition, she doesn't actually have a lot of reason to be there. It's not essential to the story. It's kind of like, it's almost like that Tom Bombadil character from Lord of the Rings. It's like, even though a lot of people were mad that they didn't do that, didn't have that character in the films, but the whole nature of that character would never have worked on screen anyway. And I feel like some ways she's kind of this character where it's like, unless she's telling people, giving people information that they need to know to move the story along, she doesn't seem to have a lot of purpose. Whereas, Yoda now, either, story structure wise, it's like it's revealed that, like he was the Jedi Master who taught, Obi-Wan, and by proxy probably was, he knew Vader before he was Vader and all. But whereas Maz is like, she was just like, I've been around and I've seen a lot of eyes. It's like, well, what exactly do? You keep old Jedi artifacts in your basement, and you seem to keep a lot of weird people in your bar. I mean, what's the, what is the, it was kind of like I said, it was kind of like, well, we need a Yoda-ish character to move the story forward, and we need a bar to kind of pay tribute to the Mos Eisley Cantina. And, J.J. Abrams had a way of like this is some fourth grade teacher I really liked, or something like that. It's like this weird combination of things that they needed to tell the Force Awakens story, and the personal touch of a J.J. Abrams who likes to have that. He likes to name characters after personal assistants. Whereas now we're at this point where it's he's not the George Lucas, he's not the Kathy Kennedy, he's not the Lawrence Kasdan of Star Wars. He's back doing Star Trek of all things.
Yeah, I mean, it and as you say, Lupita Nyong'o has a lot more going on. John Boyega has more going on. Daisy Ridley, these actors are going to have more and more work coming their way, and their schedules are going to get tighter and tighter. So I think she will be in the movie, but how much is she going to be in the movie? Is it going to be one of the things where like, oh look, Maz is here, and then they go do something else where it's they put her in the movie for the sake of putting her in the movie? And yeah, I take your point too that they needed Maz Kanata's castle in the movie more so than they actually needed Maz Kanata, right? It served the plot for like, okay, they go to a place to, ostensibly, get a clean ship or whatever,
right.
They need a clean ship. So they go to this place where John Boyega kind of abandoned ship, but then he comes back and they're discovered, and the resistance shows up, et cetera, and then Daisy Ridley Rey gets taken away, right? So they needed a location where all of that happens, but the actual character of like who's in charge of that location was less important to the story. And I liked the character and I liked what they did with the character, but yeah, actually having that it could have been anyone, right? It could have been any character. It didn't even have to be like someone who allegedly is like sort of a force user, maybe, or not.
I mean, they technically could have gone back to Mos Eisley. You know what I mean? They're like, well, this place is, this place could be a little rough.
They could have gone to,
if we're looking for
they could have gone pretty much anywhere.
The funny thing is that the sad thing in some respects is that Maz Kanata's castle isn't nearly as menacing as Mos Eisley Cantina. They don't look at anything. It's like then they go in and they have absolutely no problem. And even though that they're trying to lay low, within 5 seconds, Maz Kanata announces his name, which is a little it's a little strange in the thing. If she's supposedly so smart and she hasn't seen this guy in a while, and he's showing up with strange people, why would she just announce his name? And like, now everybody knows that. And
Han Solo is here.
And within 10 seconds, you've got that resistance droid and Bazine Natal.
That's a great point.
Narking him out. It's kind of like she's actually more of a liability at this point.
Yeah.
It's like, and also, wouldn't it be like the first thing that she would say, like, oh, by the way, I have your brother-in-law's lightsaber in the basement. You might want to take that to Leia. She might want that.
Yeah.
It's like, why was it sitting down there all this time? And, I don't know. I have like a lot of issues with that sequence, and I don't know why. I think I watch it.
I mean, I think you're right too. Right? There's a lot of exposition. It kind of slows. I mean, the Rathtar bit slows the movie down too. But at Maz Kanata's castle, like that character is great, and there's the flashback or the hallucination sequence, which is neat, but it does kind of slow the plot down.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Rathtar thing because it's kind of a it's like, what if the Dianoga was far more threatening than it turned out? So there's a lot of comedy in that, and some people have even said like, oh, they don't like the special effects of the Rathtar. I honestly, that whole thing is fine. I think it's fun, but yeah, it's the I
think the Rathtar sequence by itself is fine, but it kind of breaks up the rhythm that they're establishing in the movie.
Yes.
And so then you have the Rathars, and that kind of breaks up the rhythm, and then you go to Maz Kanata's castle, which is a pretty slow dialogue heavy sequence until the First Order shows up. Right. So it's this kind of like lull in the middle of the movie. So yeah, I like that in general, and I think there are important parts of the movie there, but at the same time, like we've been saying, like, yeah, Maz Kanata is not the most like crucial character to the plot of this movie, of episode 7 anyway.
It's funny, after you've said that Rathtar thing, it's like, yeah, if you really think about it, you could completely dump that scene too. You could change it. You could like literally they could show up, Han Solo could get the ship and go, hey, this is my ship. And then they go, oh, God, the First Order's here. Then they all say, all right, well, we're going to go. And they get in the ship and it's like Han and Chewie could be flying it. Ray and, Ray and Finn could be running the guns.
You could edit out that whole sequence. And then, Han Solo, it goes like, Chewie, we're home. And then they have the conversation about the Force, and it's real, all of it. And then cut to, we need to get you to do a clean ship. We're going to see an old friend of mine, and it would flow just as well, or maybe even better. Or you wouldn't have lost any real.
You'd have a 90-minute Force Awakens.
Yeah,
which maybe Disney would like that. I mean, but yeah, it's true. It's kind of like people give George a lot of shit about the fact that he would throw in action sequences to kind of pad out the stories. I think that's kind of that's 2000. That's the post-millennium way of making an action movie. It's a lot of set pieces. It kind of goes back to the idea that I was talking a couple weeks ago when I saw Amy Hennig speaking about storytelling and the fact that there's got to be more than just and then this happens. It's got to have a connection, and it's like, obviously we can't go back and redo it. You got to take it for what it is. But it's kind of, maybe not to. I don't want to throw a bunch of shade on J.J. Abrams, but maybe Rian Johnson's a bit more nuanced of a filmmaker, even though even though J.J.'s got scads of history working in television, with Felicity and Alias and whatnot. That might have almost been the way he is, his main experience is in telling episodic stories, and the fact that you don't have to talk a lot about X because, well, that's going to show up in another episode, and I'm going to do 22 episodes this season. So if I drop all of this in the first 3 episodes, people are going to be bored. So, I mean, maybe that's just the way he tells a story. It's like, well, let's just parse it out a little bit. We don't have to tell everybody what Snoke is really up to, and we don't have to show the wide variety of Kylo Ren's, emotional range, because there's going to be 2 more movies.
Right.
So, I mean, there is an argument to be said that, like, you don't want to overdo it. But I'm kind of hoping that, like Rian Johnson, Looper's, I mean, if you're on the fence, like Looper would be definitely something that I think you should check out before episode 8 comes out. It's not the first time I saw it, I didn't like it. Mainly because like with time travel movies, I always have issues with time travel movies, but as a story, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the Lupita Nyong'o, it's like I said, yeah. I mean, I thought I'd heard some rumor that months ago that Andy Serkis hadn't even been contacted, that he hadn't filmed anything. And I know that he's more of a hands-on guy. He likes to be in the room when he's doing it, kind of situation, if it's possible. I mean, I don't think he could do that. He did that all with the, all the Lord of the Rings and whatever, the first Hobbit movie that he was in, and I don't think he did for like Kong. I think he was the guy. I mean, Planet of the Apes, I think he was on set for those. So I think he's a guy like that. He's like one of those guys where he's like, this is an organic process. You can't just plug me in at the end.
Yeah.
But, we've never heard Peter Mayhew admit that hasn't been on set for episode 8, which I think we all kind of know.
Right.
This just reminds me, and I'm putting you on the spot here. Did you ever hear him he had been showing pieces of his episode 4 script. Peter Mayhew had been showing on Instagram.
Oh yeah.
And it was going to be some big reveal. Did we ever do the big reveal?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I wonder
honestly, it's been a while.
I honestly think I think I had said on the show that it was probably going to end with him either saying it, which was either he was going to say I'm going to be in episode 8 or he was going to try to sell the script or something. I don't know. Maybe he ended up selling it privately and never did the contest. Maybe somebody got caught wind and said, "Oh, is he going to sell a script?" and they contacted him privately and it just never went anywhere publicly. I don't know. That's out of left field.
Yeah. Well, so talking about directors and styles, I'm starting to get a little worried about the Han Solo movie just because, and it's completely, many people would say it's completely unjustified, but for this reason, but Phil Lord and Chris Miller are apparently have some sort of responsibility for that Son of Zorn TV show.
Oh yeah.
That is out there now, and it looks pretty bad. And so now I'm like, oh, they're involved in this show. Oh, I don't know about this movie now, guys. Which is completely an overblown reaction. I think they're like executive producers. I have no idea how much day to day. It's like a live action show, except for the main character who's animated, and it's like, what if He-Man or a budget version of He-Man was in the real world and like contemporary life. That's the premise for their show, and it just like it looks bad. Like the animation is flat compared to the real people, as you might expect, but it just doesn't look good. And then I didn't even know that they were involved in it until a couple of days ago. And I was just like, oh, I don't know about this movie now. Because their output, their animated movies seem to do really well. Lego Movie and what's it called? Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. People seem to think was fun. But then their live action movies, like I guess people like 21 Jump Street. I don't know if it was good, but people liked it. But 22 Jump Street was awful. At least I thought it was awful. And some of their other, I guess they have a role in the Last Man on Earth show, which I think sometimes it's fine. It seems like it's kind of hit and miss, right? It's not like an unmitigated success.
Well, it got picked up for a third, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's doing pretty well, but and I should say I haven't watched a lot of episodes. My wife watches them, and she seems to think it's kind of hit and miss. So take that, this is a second-hand or third-hand account. But I don't know, something about this Son of Zorn show. It's like I don't know. I don't know that all of their ideas are the best ideas. And so that's what I'm like, I've transferred all of my concerns about Gareth Edwards and Rogue One. I've transferred them now to the Rogue One movie.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and like,
or to the Han Solo movie.
Yeah, they are executive producers, but if you look at least on Wikipedia, there's like 4 or 5 producers of that show.
Yeah,
so I don't know how much
I guess
they're involved.
So there's something on USA Today where it says the quirky comedy comes from the creative minds of Phil Lord and Chris Miller. So I guess Phil Lord says, we decided to start a TV company at Fox, and one of the things we were excited to do is try to figure out something in an animation space, which is like a very Hollywood development-y thing to say. So they basically came up with the idea and then hired writers to like make it work. So that's their role with it.
Yeah, I just wonder. It's like I think your assessments are fair. I mean, I've watched The Last Man on Earth, and I've seen all 2 seasons of it. And I had a thing where I went, the first season is like I really liked it out of the thing, and then I kind of got really soft on it. And it's like, I mean, I really like some of the ideas, but then I noticed I had a lot of at least with Last Man, I had a lot of preconceived notions about what it was going to be about, and it didn't quite match up with that. And then I think by the second season, I think that a lot of the problems I had with it had been kind of resolved, or they'd kind of been much better about showing you what their kind of their locus was going to be, about what they thought was important in the storytelling.
Right.
And like, yeah, I mean, there could be hit or miss episodes where you're like, oh, geez, but I did think there was some pretty good. It's almost kind of, at this point, it's almost kind of morphing into, from being just a strict comedy to being a very, 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 very soft science fiction kind of show. I mean, there's no supernatural stuff, and there's the concept of, there is the talk about the virus that they do go back and refer to it. And, they've been bringing in more and more characters. Obviously, it's a misnomer. There's not just one guy. I mean, even what's his name? Oh, God, now I'm completely blanking on his name. The guy. Oh, the star of the show.
Yeah.
Anyway, his character has grown a lot. So, I mean, I don't know what their day-to-day kind of connection. I think a lot of it is Will Forte.
Yes.
I think there's a woman who was a SNL writer or whatever. I think she's kind of the narrative force behind that now. So yeah, I think 21-22 Jump Street, those are a very specific kind of movie. It's like, well, it's nobody would. I mean, I loved 21 Jump Street as a kid because it was like, I love the idea of teenage narcs. I mean, it was a cool show for a while. It had all these. It's the thing which I don't think is such a big deal anymore. But when I was a kid, teenagers were always played by guys and girls in their 20s. It was like that. That's the idea where it created this weird idea where it's like, I don't have 5 o'clock shadow. And this guy's supposed to be 16 years old or whatever, It's, so the movies really are a very different kind of, like,
yeah,
they're almost like an airplane movie without the visual gags. It's kind of like that kind of idea where it's like, there's no reason these guys would ever be cops. It's ridiculous. Right. Yeah, and the second one is kind of like midway. I'm not going to say I hate that movie because I'll be honest, it was so weird as to make me go, this is going to be the one where people are going to go in 10 years. They're going to be like, hey, it's a lot of fun? 22 Jump Street. Don't watch the first one. Watch the second one. Because midway, 2/3 of the movie, they ran out of script and they just made it really weird.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, what's his face? Kurt Russell's son is in it, basically playing Kurt Russell. And it's kind of like for a nerd like me, it's kind of like, oh, geez, like you get to see young Kurt Russell again. But yeah, I'm not going to sit here and beat my chest and go, oh, if you're the kind of person who can kind of, take your critical mind away and, if you enjoy Broken Lizard movies occasionally, you might enjoy 22 Jump Street. But yeah, if you're going for, if you like, I just don't like stupid stuff, don't watch it. You know what I mean?
Well, you're making me feel a little bit better about the Han Solo movie. And for that, I thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're, when they produce stuff and they have their fingers in so many pies, and I will say I'm not a big fan of the Lego Movie, but I'm not a big fan of animated films. I mean, it's not that I don't think they should exist. It's just they don't speak to me. I don't go out and I haven't seen a Pixar movie in like 10 years. It's just not something that my brain sees, which is weird because I spend so much time talking about ostensibly a kid's movie, a kid's franchise, with kids for like hundreds of hours of talking about it. Whereas stuff like the Lego Movie feels like, oh, this is too greasy kid stuff for my taste, which it's just the way it's, horses for courses or whatever. I think that these guys operate at a level where they're not going to go into this and go, hey, let's just try something completely different. And let's like completely throw it off. I mean, for all I know, it's like maybe these guys sit around and like when they're on airplanes, they're out, reading Bloodlines and Heir to the Empire, and they're kind of nerdy about it. But I don't know. I haven't really heard much about what their personal connection to Star Wars is, and I don't know if that necessarily makes that's something that a director or producer has to have. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, when you get a J.J. Abrams, and maybe in the future they are going to have people that are going to say like, yeah, I never saw Star Wars until like a couple years ago. I've only seen like the first two of them, and now that I've been hired to direct this film, I've seen them all, and it's like I think that's gonna be even weirder. Because it was weird enough to have like, oh yeah, it's Star Wars and it's George Lucas is not involved, but these are the children of Star Wars, JJ saw when it came out. Ryan Johnson is he probably saw Empire, Gareth I think is slightly too young to have seen, the originals, but these are like the children of Star Wars. When we get to the ones that don't even like weren't even Star Wars fans to start with, I think that's going to be when my radar is going to go,
Right. They got into Star Wars because, the first Star Wars thing they were exposed to was the Clone Wars or Rebels, which is not meant to be a slam on either of those two things, but that's a whole different introduction, and that's a whole different like way of thinking about it and like reason for getting involved in it than like, oh, I saw, even if it's like, oh, I saw the Phantom Menace when I was 12 or 8 or,
Yeah, and I think we're at this in this regime of Lucasfilm. It's like they've got this brain trust of Lawrence Kasdan, and I don't know his. I know Jake Kasdan had done some films, but I don't know this other Kasdan son. I don't think it's Jake.
John Kasdan. He's done some TV.
So I mean, he's obviously connected to, he grew up with it at least. He's got the benefit of his father's Star Wars intellect, and we've got, Filoni and Hidalgo and all these storytellers that we know is from what we are starting to learn is kind of that's how they do it. It's like they're kind of working on a house style. Like we don't really have to worry about them coming out and being like, they might experiment a little bit, but I don't think they're going to experiment in story. I think they might experiment in visuals. Maybe they might want to, maybe this might have a little bit more comedy in it, but they can't just make it a joke.
Right.
And, these guys seem to, I haven't seen this new animated thing they're involved with, but, at least they're, as far as I understand, they're at least tangentially kind of connected to comedy. Of they work with comedians. They've I guess I'm kind of like, I guess I don't have as much invested in this Han Solo movie. It's like now that I've seen Rogue One, trailers and stuff. I haven't seen Rogue One, but I feel okay about it. I'm much more comfortable about the kind of story that they're going to tell. It's like, it's not really going to push Star Wars forward. It's just going to flesh it out. And I kind of feel like that's these anthology movies, like their purview is going to be fleshing out the universe. And to be perfectly honest, if we don't like them, you can kind of
there are other things to enjoy.
Yeah, it's like you can kind of step aside and go, yeah, I saw Rogue One, and it was like, okay, that's interesting, but it's not really my thing. And then you could, same thing with a Han Solo movie. It's like, we're still going to have, Han Solo, even if we find out that in the Han Solo movie, he's, working a banana stand on Corellia, or, selling
Right.
frozen bananas or chocolate covered banana or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, there's so many ways it could go wrong, but my anxiety is pretty low. I think all my anxiety is firmly focused on one guy, and that's Colin Trevorrow. It's just not to diss the guy. It's just I honestly dislike.
We don't have a lot of evidence.
Intensely dislike Jurassic World, and that was his big set piece. Now, I kind of, like I said, enjoyed Safety Not Guaranteed that he did with more of a small kind of budget thing. But just, I don't know. And I don't know how much Jurassic World is really him. When you're dealing with a huge casting kind of situation and a script situation and a special effects situation, how much personality, do you get to actually add to that? So I can't necessarily, it's like blaming, I feel like a little bit kind of blaming Colin Trevorrow wholly for how much I disliked Jurassic World. It'd be like blaming Oscar Isaac for how intensely I disliked the most recent X-Men movie he was in, which, wow, what a stinker of a movie. I mean, it was like, I saw it last weekend and I was just like, I was kind of, I was celebrating an anniversary last weekend and I thought, we wanted something, we didn't want to go to movies, but we wanted to see something we hadn't seen. So I just went ahead and I spent the $15 and bought it. And I'm just like, God, I wish iTunes had refunds. This was
well,
really
at the same
bad.
time, as you say, it's cheaper than two movie tickets.
It is cheaper. And it was a, but even having spent $15, it kind of hurt.
Yeah.
But that's not Oscar Isaac's fault. And, Jurassic World is not necessarily, and well, of course, Jurassic World was the hugest grossing film of 15, and who am I to say that? But I'm talking on artistic levels. I was just like, I'm hoping that he will be able to tell a more intimate story, and I think Safety Not Guaranteed shows that he at least has those chops. It's not going to be like a thing where he made, Gareth Edwards had made kind of a more intimate movie with a lot of special effects for his first role. Right. And then to be, now that I've kind of come around to your way of thinking about Godzilla, that it well, I mean, I'll be
soon everyone will agree with me.
Pity Godzilla, the pitiful band of lizard.
I have to say, I am actually very excited to see Shin Godzilla, though.
Which one is that? Is that the one?
It's the new one. They made some Japanese filmmakers made a new Godzilla, and it actually looks really good.
Did I hear that it's not coming out in this country? It's going to go straight.
It is, but it's only going to be in theaters for like a week in the U.S. and only in certain cities and whatever. So I'm hoping it should show up in Austin. I imagine the Draft House will pick it up,
right?
At least, if not others. So. The week of like October 11th, 12th, 13th, etc. It looks like that's when it'll be, at least in Austin. And yeah, I'm gonna go see it because it looks really good.
You got to get the taste of that Gareth Edwards Godzilla. But yeah, like I said, yes. I could honestly now. I'm at the point where it's like I will concede that Godzilla was a misfire, story wise. But not enough for me to go like, oh God, Gareth's we're effed, that kind of thing. Where it was just like, yeah, okay, he had his trial by fire, and maybe he got singed a little bit, so he's probably learned a lot from it, and it looks like, with the reshoots, that if he ran into the same problems a second time, then he took advice and went out and fixed it instead of just saying like, I'm an artist, and because it is. I mean, Star Wars movies are really where art meets commerce meets, community in some ways, because it's like, you also have a bunch of nerds that get very, bent out of shape when things are done a certain way.
About their Godzilla movies.
Movies.
Yeah. So speaking of nerds getting bent out of shape about stuff, so there's a rumor, or I guess it's a suggestion going around that the stormtroopers in Rogue One are going to have jetpacks because some of the action figures, collectibles associated with this movie that are coming out, they gave the stormtroopers jetpacks. So the question for you is, like, do the toys actually tell us anything about the movies? Because the Rogue One, or excuse me, the Episode 7 action figures had all sorts of crazy gear,
battle armor,
right? Like battle armor and weird like drilling things, and you had to combine 4 of them together, and you got a super laser or something that you could give to Finn. So, I mean, I don't know though. These jetpacks don't. At the same time, these jetpacks that are coming with these collectibles don't quite look the same. Like, they look like, oh yeah, that seems like a reasonable thing to give this character.
Yeah, they're very similar to the backpacks that you unlock at a certain level in the Battlefront game.
Yeah, and so there's some speculation that they were inspired by those as well. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think the toys are ever an indication of what you get. You know, it's kind of the... Yeah, exactly. A lot of they had a different tiers of figures, and even the most, I have the only Force Awakens toy I bought was the. Well, let me just reach and grab it so I can actually tell you what's in it.
Well, I mean, I think we all know it's Constable Zuvio, right?
Right, it's Constable Zuvio.
You and everyone else in this country went crazy for Constable Zuvio.
I melt it down in my Ninja blender, and I add it to yogurt, and it's a smoothie. It's a Constable Zuvio smoothie, and it's got all the plastic I need for a full day's feeding. But it's so I have this Captain Phasma, and what is she? I never really looked at this because I kind of ordered this the same time I ordered my big Captain Phasma, and I like that better. It's basically a concrete drill part. I don't know what this is. Yeah, right. It's this ridiculous topper,
right. As seen in the movie.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I don't think you have to worry about it.
Yeah. Well,
if you're anti jetpack, on the other hand, it's a battle movie. Right. I think they can have a jetpack.
Well, that's the other question: is how much would it bother you if they did have jetpacks? And I want to say, I think did the clone troopers have jetpacks at one point?
Not in the movies. They might have been in the movies. I'm sure they had.
I don't know that they did in the. I could be making that up.
And like in the Gendy Tarakovsky or whatever, the animated, I think they all used like ropes and.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe I'm mistaken about that. But
I would honestly.
So you would not be opposed to stormtroopers with jetpacks in your Rogue One?
No, because it's like at least the way they depict jetpacks in Star Wars, going back to Boba Fett and Jango Fett, is that they're kind of like jump packs. It's like they'll send you up 30 feet in the air kind of thing. It's not a thing where you're going to be hovering around with the, when they always show like those great old videos of the 70s when these guys have these jetpacks and they've got the arms sticking out and they're all like, they're kind of hovering and trying to, I think these are going to be like jump packs. But other than the toys, I don't know what kind of battle that, they've been very, cagey, probably because they probably really need to be, because they got to give somebody something to wow them when they go and see the movie in December.
Right.
That was supposed to be another surprise that got kind of, meted out, because we don't know. We've seen a lot of troopers, but it's like, where are we seeing these? Are these just on the ones that are coming out for Rogue?
For Rogue One, yeah.
Yeah, whatever the 3 3/4 inch. We're not seeing
these. I believe so, yes.
On the Black Series. See, now if I was seeing these on the Black Series, I would be more like, yeah, they're going to do this for sure. But if it's just, like I said, if it's the 3 3/3 series, it's probably just something for added play, which I would actually give them kudos for, because it is kind of one of those things where anything to I think at least, not that we're going to get into toys much, but the things, the drips and drabs I've seen is like they really are. I think they're going heavy on toys for this Rogue One. I think they think it's going to be a very.
This is your toy movie,
right? Which I don't know if you know this. The three, what is the ACT ad or whatever? The $300 app controlled, all terrain transport. That's that's been a big controversial issue on some of the Star Wars collecting podcasts I listen to, like Toy Run, that they had kind of said, $300. I mean, even guys that are like, this is like their main focus of their hobby were taken aback by that price, But I think they really are going to push for, this Rogue One's going to be a heavy toy situation where the toys are going to be in the stores for a long time, a lot of commercials, and I think they might be throwing in these jetpacks for just replayability, because the original Star Wars stuff, they came with a gun, and that was it. And then like later on, around the time of Empire, it was like cut your three.
If you wanted to make them fly around, you just picked them up and went
right,
whatever.
But between Empire and Jedi, they did a thing where you could send away your proof of purchase, and then you got the thing that you could put on Luke's back that Yoda would fit in. They got the little clear plastic gas masks for being in the asteroid. They got the what else was it? There's backpacks. I still have some of those. It's like I found them in a bag, and it's like they've all not very high quality plastic, but that was the. They didn't even think about like expanding playability until years after the toys came out. Now they can just go like, let's just pack a few things in extra. That way we don't have to, because I don't think kids do now that you can get stuff sent to your house from Amazon in 2 days or whatever. I don't think kids are like, oh yeah, 6 to 8 weeks, and I just can't wait. By the time 6 to 8 weeks comes back, they might be on to something completely different. So they kind of got to get them hooked now.
Yep.
Now, speaking of having access, I mean, this is almost kind of, I don't even know if this is really news, is that I guess the Turner Cable Networks, they made a deal that they will have, well, actually, you have the notes here as the first 6. I think first 7. I think they're only doing the first 6.
Oh, okay.
I think they're doing a
marathon of them later this month. You're right. Force Awakens is not.
Yeah, that one.
I think it's Force Awakens. I think has shown up on Stars already, but not.
It's now available if you have a Stars subscription. You can watch it on Amazon or something like that. If if you're not the kind of person who like me, who likes to buy movies, which I can appreciate. There is something, that's the one thing when you buy movies, you miss out on that whole thing. Like, oh, so and so. Usually when a new movie comes to one of these things, you're like, oh, I've already seen this. It's like, give me something I haven't seen. But yeah, the first 6 will be on from the 20th with a marathon on September 25th. So if you're a person who doesn't likes to kind of just sit and watch them all with ads and stuff, which ugh, boy, I know. I tell you, when they used to show the original trilogy on Spike all the time when I'd be down at my mom's house and I'd be watching it, and it'd be like, oh, and you get into something. It's not that being said, when Star Wars showed up on the first regular television, I mean, we definitely sat through the ads, but now it's kind of like, if I have them all, I can watch them on my phone if I wanted to. So this isn't really for me, but
right.
I thought the one thing that I will say is that it kind of makes me wonder, like, what's the deal with the Disney? Disney had made a big deal with Netflix to bring a lot of Star Wars content, and they not only did they bring the Clone Wars, and it's to this day it's still on there, and then there was additional episodes that I think were finished for Netflix, and now we're getting ready, just the cusp of season 3 of Rebels, and none of the Rebels episodes have made it to Netflix. And there's no talk. Netflix made a deal for.
Well, they made a deal with Netflix Canada. Did they make a deal with Netflix in the US as well?
Well, they made it not for The Force Awakens, Because that was the big caveat. They said it's not going to be in the U.S. It's only going to be in Canada. It's only going to be wherever the other places Netflix is. So it's, you know, that's kind of like, I don't know how these deals work. And like I said, I don't want to buy Rebels. I don't, because even some of the guys reviewing them kind of dinged the extras. So there's nothing inherently rewatchable about the extras supposedly, so I kind of totally would be one of the things that I would love to be able to just pop on Netflix and not have to, you know, worry about having to buy, you know. It's
yeah.
So we've seen the season 3. You've seen the season 3.
Speaking of Rebels.
Yeah, speaking of Rebels, bad transition.
Oh, that's all right. They put out a trailer and then a couple of teasers for I assume the season premiere called Step into Shadow or something like that. Steps into Shadow.
What day is what's the premiere date for that?
Ooh, that's an excellent question.
And I gotta look that
23rd?
Wow, we're getting real close. Well, like what, 8 days?
Yeah. A little over a week. 24th.
24th.
Yes. So a
9
week
days
from Saturday. So I guess it'll be appearing on Saturdays. Is that right? That can't be right.
That's kind of an odd time to have it.
Yeah. So it'll be on Saturdays.
Well,
the 24th and then October 1st, 8th, 15th, and 22nd.
Yeah, that's, well, whatever. I mean, they know what they know most people don't watch them live anyway. Yeah. It's kind of like, I always watch everything on the Disney XD app myself, so it's
right.
I won't be watching it live.
Yeah. I mean, I think the show, it looks really good. Like the look of it, you know, they're honing and refining and expanding a little bit the quality of the animation and kind of the look of the show. So it looks good. You know, there's some interesting stuff in there. You know, for the premiere, they showed a little bit of Kanan's conversation with the Bendu, voiced by Tom Baker, and that has some interesting kind of philosophical force ideas in it. And they also showed a clip of. They've also put out there a clip of Ezra kind of using his force abilities, you know, kind of Jedi mind control on a stormtrooper. That's sort of interesting. I mean, the trailer, the actual trailer, I thought was notable just for how fast it was edited together. I mean, it's really quick. And you know, watching it, I was like, oh, George Lucas would love this, just because it's the editing's so quick,
faster, more intense.
Yeah. So we'll see. You know, it just scanning the first 5 or so episode titles, I'm still a little worried that it's going to be kind of disjointed, where we get a Hera episode, and then we get a someone else episode, and then we get a Sabine episode, and then Kanan and Ezra get 2 episodes, and Thrawn shows up at some point, and so they have to deal with him. But, you know, is it going to be a thing like last year with the Inquisitors, where, you know, Thrawn shows up and you're like, oh, he's the big scary bad guy, but then he disappears for like 4 episodes,
right? Like,
but wait, I thought they were worried about Thrawn. You know, it's and the other part of it that I'm a little like, you know, for all the talk of that Dave Filoni has of, well, this isn't the Clone Wars, and I want to make sure that, you know, we keep this Rebels is its own show, and yeah, you know, I really liked working with the voice cast of the Clone Wars, so I wanted to bring everyone back, you know, one last time or whatever. But, you know, it's not the Clone Wars. It's not the Clone Wars. Katie Sackhoff is reprising her Clone Wars role on Rebels for a Sabine episode about her Mandalorian heritage, and I don't know, it just, her character on Clone Wars, Katie Sackhoff's character on Clone Wars was, you know, was tied up in the kind of Mandalorian politics of the Death Watch and the, you know, the pacifist group, and who is the main Mandalore warrior. And then Darth Maul shows up and he declares himself the protector of Mandalore. And it's just, I never particularly really cared about the internal politics of Mandalore myself. And so it's it's like, are we really reprising that? Like, I want it to be. I'm just worried that it's going to be, again, kind of like, oh, let's just continue this Clone Wars storyline rather than something that actually adds to Sabine's character. So it's the execution of these ideas is something that that tension between like, oh, this, these ideas sound okay, or these ideas just don't sound great, versus how they actually get executed in the show is something that I'm always kind of going back and forth about.
Yeah, and I totally understand. I think it's that in a kind of strange thing where, again, the thing I keep talking about, the idea of pleasing the fans, and it's almost gotten to the. I can't speak for anybody that works for Lucasfilm because I don't know any of them, and if I did, I wouldn't be talking about it. But just I can't imagine that these guys aren't getting kind of irritated. This thing where they just like bring back this person and bring back that person, and I want this person to be in this thing, and it's like I have this, I definitely have opinions about stuff, and I'm always giving them, but at the end of the day, I feel like it's like you have to kind of just acquiesce and like let the creatives do their creative stuff. Now, that's not to say when it comes out you can't criticize it or have anxiety like you do, or kind of call them out for the fact of like, why are you, replicating Clone Wars in the casting by keep bringing in these characters? But yeah, I guess my point is that I wonder how much of this is influence. Like, oh, you guys are doing Mandalorians this season. Well, you're going to talk about that. I forget what Katie Sackhoff's character was.
Bo-Katan.
Yeah, and I don't really remember. I didn't even know she was. I was like, she's coming back. I mean, I like Katie Sackhoff from Battlestar Galactica and whatnot. But I didn't even know she was on this show. I didn't know she did voice acting. But
yeah. And I should be clear too. I've talked about how the Clone Wars isn't exactly my favorite, and my feelings towards bringing Clone Wars people and characters and storylines and everything into Rebels has less to do with that and more like, make it its own show. Like, make Rebels its own show, and you know what, Clone Wars is over, and I understand that like the past helps determine the future, and that these things are tied together in some sense, but it's just like, just let Rebels be its own show.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's, there's no better indicator of that than the fact that, we were kind of presented they're a ragtag group of disparate type of people all brought together under generally self-interest that turns into, ideology of this being against the Empire. Yeah, and it's just like, I love the idea of them being kind of on that ship a lot and doing stuff together and solving stuff together and growing together. Now, I know that it kind of creates a weird kind of thing when you have, two Jedi on board the ship, and they kind of want to expand the mythology of Jedi training and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Hera and Sabine, it's like what they keep doing is, instead of finding a great way for them to all work together, they keep plucking them out and having their own one-shots. It's like, oh, let's have someone have a one-shot. And I don't feel like you necessarily always have to grab somebody out of the narrative and put them in a thing where they're the sole focus for you to like really learn about a character. Now, that might be something later on in the evolution of the character, and you're like, we've done everything we can as an ensemble. Let's start doing one-offs. They kind of felt like they did, like they feel like they joined the rebellion a little too quickly. Now, there might have been this thing like, if we don't get this much story told or this much viewing, you're going to get 2 seasons, or you're going to get 1 season. So they kind of had to, maybe every season is not guaranteed. So they're like, hey, we're just trying to tell a consistent story, which, that's a whole nother ball of wax. But I'm just saying, like, I'll just make the assumption that Lucasfilm is happy that they want to keep continuing this. I wish they had kind of parsed it out a little bit better. They, like I said,
Yeah.
I like the idea, like when Hera and Kanan, there seems to be like a real romantic thing now that honestly don't know where it came from. I mean, it kind of, I guess there were some tendrils in it, the idea, but I honestly initially took it for just honest concern of a compatriot. I didn't take it. And then by the end, when she's caressing his face at the end of the thing, when he's been blinded, it becomes more of a, this is a romantic thing. And it's like, well, where did that come from? Is this just, if they're not doing missions together anymore, it's just like, whoa, like we got to borrow the ghost, or we got to, what's the name of the ship that spits out of the ghost? It's like the one that's not nearly as cool as the ghost, that they go on missions all the time. And it's like, well, they're always separate. How did they kind of start falling in love if they're not doing, stuff as an ensemble? I mean, I knew Ezra and Sabine had something where like Ezra had a crush on her or something.
Right. They kind of dropped that, which I was glad.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of, you don't want to, in this day and age, it's like you don't want to just keep defaulting to the the time honored traditions of stuff. It's like leave some room for some growth.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder though. I mean, it could be interesting to have certainly the way they left it with season 2 and some of what we've seen of season 3. You have Maul is still kind of around, and
I mean, he's on the ship, isn't he? I mean,
yeah. And Ezra is learning more about the Sith, and Kanan's worried about that, and so you could get to the point where Kanan and Ezra kind of drift away from the group, and maybe you have Hera trying to keep everyone together, and you have Kanan torn between his connection to Hera versus trying to be the mentor for Ezra. And in which case, you have kind of Ezra and Kanan kind of, and the Ezra Kanan Maul triangle is like one anchor for the show, but then what do you do with Sabine? She just goes off and does like Mandalorian stuff with jetpacks. Remember, the Mandalorians have jetpacks.
Yes, they do have jetpacks.
Right, so like you just have her doing that stuff, and then kind of what they never really nailed down her place in the group. And so it's like, all right, so what does she do while Kanan and Ezra are off doing their Jedi assist stuff? What does Zeb do? Does he go try to find out more about these Lasats who are apparently not eradicated like he thought, or do they ever bring that I can't remember that Imperial officer who was like his nemesis.
Callus.
Right. Yeah, Agent Callus. Do they bring him back and have him and Zeb do a thing again? And how does Thrawn kind of throw all of this off? Hera's still very focused on the rebellion, and I think there's an episode where they try to get a squad, at least a squadron's worth of Y-wings to help out the rebellion, and she's very focused on kind of the big picture, the big cause, and Kanan is kind of getting pulled into this personal Ezra stuff. So having that tension, I don't mean to suggest that like every episode needs to be an ensemble with every member of the cast and they're doing a mission for the rebellion, but at the same time, like it needs to feel like a cohesive whole and not just disjointed, where like you said, okay, we'll give each character kind of gets a one-shot episode, or a few characters get some one-shot episodes, but most of the time we don't really hear from them, which is how I feel like season 2 got at times. Like unless it was Sabine's episode, or like a Sabine and Hera episode, or the Sabine and Kanan episode, but like unless she was one of the main characters in that episode, you barely saw her. So and same with Zeb, right? And even Hera. So that's kind of what I'm again concerned with, is too harsh, but that's kind of what I'll be interested to see how they handle that. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, maybe that, and I've never heard anybody say anything like this, but I almost wonder if they considered, like, if they had gone in that, ragtag ensemble thing, if they had worried about maybe comparisons to, Joss Whedon's Firefly, which, I mean, there'd be worse things. Like, that's one of those shows that, I can never watch it again because I'm completely sick of it. I was never like a crazy like fan of it. I enjoyed it, but in 13 episodes, they did way better job kind of showing what an ensemble on a ship could do, and how everybody gets a part in it. It's not like a thing where people are kind of on the rails or coasting. It's like everybody had a purpose to the story, and I almost feel like it would have behooved them to maybe dip in and look at some of the stuff that they did. Not that they want to tell the same story or anything like that, but I think it's one of the situations where that's just my expectation of something like that. It's like, well, if you're going to have a ship with a bunch of people, maybe they should, But obviously, there's some kind of decision in the writing room or the producer's room that these idea that, like, let's just break these two off this week, and let's just break these two off this week.
Right. And that's a very kind of season 2, season 3, season 4 idea for a show. Once you set up, you have a cast.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, well, we've never seen this combination of characters have to work together before, or let's put these two together, let's put these three together, let's put those two together. That's kind of a very like, all right, and we've kind of set up this group of characters. Now let's put them in different combinations to see how they play off one another. And for me, it's like, yeah, they did a good job establishing most of the characters, but I'm still not sure that they like fully established mostly Sabine at this point to make it worthwhile to do that now.
Right. And it's, think about like the third season of, say, where we were, like the third season of Farscape. Which I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen Farscape, but it's like, was that the one? I think that was the Scorpius one, and
yeah, they introduced Scorpius.
Well, he came
might
out
have even been at the end of season 2.
Yeah, but I mean, he was wasn't one point they were basically like he was on the ship at one point. I get it's been a while. Like I said, like there was the one that was the 3 Creightons and the.
Oh, I guess Scorpius shows up at the end of season 1.
Yeah,
even. But then. Season 3, I guess, is when there are 2 Crichtons, and then Scorpius is like inside Crichton's head, and
right. I mean, that's probably narratively way more of a complex story than they would want to tell. But the reason I bring that up is just because, I mean, look at when a quote, where we've had so many of these things now, it's almost a genre upon itself. It's the ensemble on a spaceship kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas, some people have gotten a pretty good distance in a short amount of time. And I feel like that's, I think Rebels is like, if they had established the ensemble a little bit better, then they would have totally been free to have done a lot more interesting. Not that they won't be doing interesting things. I'm totally like that being, all complaints aside, I'm totally excited about season 3. And I'll just take it as it is.
I'm really curious to see where they're going.
I'm not so locked into this idea of the way I think things should be that I'm going to, can't see the forest for the trees. But I'm just thinking it's like, it's just the idea where it's like, well, you guys could have gone a little bit, well, and maybe my problem is I'm trying to turn something is for kids into something that is more adult, even though it's like, how adult is Star Wars? It's like, maybe I'm trying to get it up from a PG to a PG-13, but there's people are getting stabbed with lightsabers and falling in pits too. So not that I want more violence. It's just, I just want it to be a little bit more, I want it to feel a little bit more real. And and it's already in my mind is like animation already feels like it has a thing against it, and then when we get to that, it's like I don't know. Speaking of other formats, do we want to hit Poe Dameron 6 before we sign off?
Yeah, I think we can talk about it pretty quickly.
So Poe Dameron 6, we are in the aptly, at this point, we're on the aptly named prison planet Megalox 6. Am I right? Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. Megalox Beta.
Megalox. Why did I say Megalox 6? I'm thinking of every other spaceship, every other space show where it's just the planets.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been. Well, geez, I'm doing a terrible. Gracchus the Hutt is there.
Right. Gracchus the Hutt is in the prison. He has set Poe and Terex to the task of freeing him from said prison, and he is going to, whoever frees him from the prison, he'll give them the information about where Lor San Tekka went. Terex basically has no intention of actually doing that. He's going to do it and then like kill Gracchus or something once he has the information. And where we last left issue 5, the Black Squadron astromech droids were doing something up in the like prison control command center, and they encountered some big mean droid. So in this one, BB-8 manages to short circuit the droid or something. They get around it. One of the astromech droids gets destroyed, but the others are fine. So what they do is the droids then turn off the prison's gravity field, because the planet itself has like higher gravity than normal, and it's protected by this field that imposes normal gravity. So the droids turn off the field. Poe, Dameron, and Black Squadron apparently have like personal gravity fields on their belts or something.
I know.
It's like, I mean, that's also a very like science fiction TV show kind of idea.
I'm willing to.
We need something to move this plot along, and to like. We need to keep this moving and make sure that our heroes are not affected by the same technology as the bad guys. So they have personal gravity fields. That's just a thing now.
Exactly.
So they break into Gracchus's compound, get him out. Terex is affected by the gravity, but he manages to call his ship, which then sends a droid out to basically, it's like a little droid on wheels. It picks him up and carries him onto the ship. The ship has its own gravity field. The carry-on Spike has its own gravity field, so he's fine once they get on the ship. Black Squadron are leaving. They put Gracchus on a shuttle that they're escorting away. The carry-on Spike crashes through the prison station, which destroys the prison, essentially, starts shooting down the rescue shuttles of all of the prison personnel, with the idea being that Black Squadron is not going to be able to let these people just die. And in fact, they turn around to try to rescue all of these prison personnel who are fleeing the prison station. But the carry-on, so they basically, it's less than a page. They just severely injure the carry-on Spike. And so the Terex has to limp away, and then he's kind of called to the carpet by Captain Phasma, who is apparently his boss or something. So Poe gets the information about where Lor San Tekka went, which he then passes on to Leia, I guess. But there's the question of how Terex got to the prison planet in the first place, because he did not get the information from the crash people about Gracchus the Hutt. So how did Terex know to go to the prison planet? And indeed, how did he get there before Black Squadron even? And that's where they're going to pick it up in the next issue of rooting out the mole or the spy or the information leak, whatever is happening. So that's issue 6.
Indeed.
Rendered speechless
by
the events of issue 6.
I liked it. I actually did.
Yeah.
I pick on this comic pretty hardcore, and I always walk away feeling bad. Like I leave the show and I go,
I really want to like this comic.
I really don't. I really feel like I'm
work.
picking on these guys, and honestly, I feel like even the art is better this time. Though I like the use of color in the last one.
Yeah, but the penciling, the actual drawing of the characters and everything was better in this one, I thought.
I think the pacing was better too. I mean, there is exposition, of course, but I think a lot of it is kind of, it's a prison break. It's, there's a lot of, it does fall within the realm of like kind of these sci-fi TV tropes and stuff, but as much as that's always I think that's a bad thing in a movie situation, that sometimes in these books, these comics, like, it can actually be good. It's they're trying to tell a simplified story, visually. And I mean, I feel like they were on this Megalox beta for like, what, 3 or 4 issues at this point?
Yeah.
It's like, wow, they've been there a long time. And for this to finally pay off, I mean, most of the stuff that I really enjoy it's the smaller things. It's the dichotomy of Gracchus being locked in his room while the Black Squadron is kind of, well, what are they doing? I guess I've got the geometry. No, they're looking at they're locked inside a room, and then Terex is like, speculating, what do you think roasted hut tastes like? And then like, what's those little bug things? I forget what they're called.
I don't
anyway,
remember.
they're going, oh, it's delicious. It's like shock but richer, and the other one says it's better fried, and you can't really see what the third guy says. It's just these little...
you mean the like little flies or whatever that hover around Papa Torin? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. And then, it's just a lot of kind of fun stuff. And then when the gravity field kind of kicks on, the idea that they're all just kind of stuck to the ground.
Yeah.
And it's, they don't really, physics isn't a thing that comes up in Star Wars a lot, It's the place that does the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. I mean, we all know that they play pretty fast and loose with scientific terms, and the concept of it being, I don't know what 10 times normal gravity would feel like, but they're stuck to the ground and whatnot. And then where's the image? Oh, the little guy, squished, the little bug thing under the weight of the, something that's only the equivalent of like 4 inches tall is completely, it's actually a little sad, to be honest. Even though they're pretty bad dudes, but one of the like little fly guys is like completely squished under his own leg, and you can see that he's a goner. The blood's coming out of him and stuff. And you're like, I mean, it's kind of like anytime you can make somebody read a comic book and actually feel something about something that's generally not real. I mean, like extremely not real.
Yeah,
like they're not humans. That's not even
pretty
Earth.
Successful.
And I think that's a pretty successful, like, kind of like almost. I don't even know what the word is, but yeah. I mean, like I said, this is. Yes, there's a lot of serendipity, like, oh, we have anti-gravity, and he has anti-gravity, but, this is, it's supposed to be fun, and it's, yes, I mean...
Right. It didn't annoy me. It was just like, oh, I guess they have personal gravity fields, okay. And it's like, all right, I guess that's how this is working.
And especially,
fine.
Like, there's that shot where Gracchus is, he's kind of squished under the weight of his own leg, his own robot legs, and he kind of looks, there's this great big, 1/3 of a panel shot of him just kind of looking like some kind of sad worm that's hooked up to a weird milking machine or something.
Right.
It's
well,
like,
I think, I had a hard time with that too. I think those were his like robotic legs or
right,
something.
Yeah, those are his.
But it definitely looked like he was on a milking machine. It was a little weird.
But I mean, that in some ways, it's like, it's kind of cool because they are kind of putting how pathetic he is in this position. I mean, I don't know much about the fictitious skeletal structures or non-skeletal structures of the huts, but obviously he didn't flatten out like a pancake. But a big fat guy who's already kind of having some trouble moving around under 10 times gravity, it's kind of like now that I've kind of taken a step back and don't expect every issue to end with them finding Lor Santeca. I'm starting to kind of enjoy it. But I mean, the thing is, I don't find the Rogue, the Black Squadron, like those individual characters, particularly interesting. So when they don't have a lot to say, I'm actually even more pleased. It's like, like I said, earlier issues when it's like they're talking about their relationships and their feelings and all that stuff was, I'm like, and am I supposed to care about these guys? But when they just kind of like slice it down to the nitty gritty of what we need to know in a story, it's like I always appreciate it. And of course, again, it's the space prison. It's the, where's that line? There's a line about, something about the Twi'lek who runs the prison. Oh yeah. So the Black Squadron has left, and he restores the gravity to the thing, and then he goes, finally turn that grav field back on and send medical teams down to the surface. We lose too many prisoners, and this cycle might end up unprofitable, and we can't have that. What is it? I've probably said this before. What is it with these with the economics of space prisons?
You mean like how efficiently they're run? Well, I guess everything's privatized. Yeah, I'm assuming with space prisons, and so.
But yeah, like they make a profit. They're for-profit space prisons. I mean, who is paying to keep these guys in jail?
Yeah, they must be subsidized. Yeah, maybe, I mean, whoever arrests them and sends them to prison, whatever jurisdiction they're under, pays for their incarceration.
Yeah.
Or subsidizes their incarceration. If they die in prison, maybe the prison doesn't get that money, which makes sense, right? And so if too many die, they need to balance like having enough prisoners to pay for the cost of the prison, but if they have too many prisoners, then it becomes too difficult to manage, and so they need like enough prisoners to run a profit, but not too much, because then that starts eating the profit. And so if they die, then you drop below the level that you need to turn the profit. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know, maybe this prison specializes in like mega gangsters, and so it's not just like they can find other prisoners from other places. I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe one hut is paying for this hut to be in there. It's just
I mean, it could be too that line was just meant to show like, look, this Twi'lek really isn't bad. She's just, this is her business, and this is how she, she's doing this for money. She's not doing this because she's like evil or virtuous. Right. She just has a profit motive, and so the fact that she's destroyed, it's like, well, there's no real reason why she has to die, right? She's not really a part of this war. She's just, she just runs a prison, and she only really cares about her profit motive, I guess. So it becomes more about, they do it that way to tell you more about the character than to say something about the economics of whatever time period, galaxy, universe, science fiction setting.
Right. Yeah, you're probably right. And that's the thing. It's like, I actually, to be honest, since we mentioned Katie Sackhoff, and she was in recently she was in one of these Riddick movies with Vin Diesel. Mm-hmm. And like, I think I've talked about this before. It's like, the one thing about those movies, they have this weird economy in the movies that I'm like obsessed with, because he's a criminal. That's the whole one. He's his character Riddick is established in this Pitch Black movie. He's a criminal on his way to a jail, and supposedly there's like this great amount of money taking prisoners to these space jails, and like and it actually, like, okay, well, it makes sense. They set it up that he's a prisoner, and then he escapes, and there's this whole movie, and he escapes. Well, in the second movie, the whole idea that he's still on the run, and it's like these people come from all over the galaxy to try to catch him because it's so lucrative to have to bring prisoners to jail. And then when they finally do get him and they take him to a jail in the middle of the movie, there's like a 5-minute conversation about who's paying for it, and you're just like, okay, well, that's a really strange conceit to have in a kind of a movie, which I'm sure you have never seen, the Chronicles of Riddick, but if you've ever seen it, it's really ridiculous that all of a sudden in the middle of the movie they bring in a space jail, and then so that movie ends, and then they make a third movie, and that is all about the fact of how much he's worth if you get him, and it's just like, I just don't understand this economy that people would make money off of, like, prisons. Like, I mean, if you've mastered intergalactic space flight, I mean, yeah, you could make an argument why people make money in the real world, but we haven't mastered interstellar flight. Is kind of my point. But I'm sorry, that was really off the.
No, I mean that is one of those practical things where, if this were a TV show, that a serialized or even not, an episodic science fiction TV show, maybe they would have opportunities to like explore that in more detail or provide more context for it. But yeah, here it's just sort of like, I'm gonna lose money. I'll be ruined. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's how this works here.
Yeah, I know. It's like, I feel like if anybody out there wants to write a book about space prisons, make sure you call me and we can talk about space prisons. I won't dwell on it.
Well, because Dark Matter, the TV show Dark Matter,
right? Yeah,
they started season 2 with a couple of space prison episodes, and I don't think they really even went into like who was in charge of the prison and why. I think they were just like, oh, our character's in a prison now, and they break out of it, or they plan to break out of the prison.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
they never really went in. I guess maybe what I said is, they didn't even feel the need to get into like who's operating this prison and why. They could in future episodes if they want to, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm probably, it's like the idea where it's like, why is it in this genre of like science fiction or whatnot that is in a realm where we can basically do whatever, as long as it makes sense to the story? Why is it that as human beings, like the first thing we want to do is like, where are we going to put the criminals? Where are we going to put these criminals? It's like this idea where like the minute they set up, like somebody sets up a fake, universe, the first thing they're like, let's figure out what the punitive levels are. Because I mean, even like, I think Red Dwarf has the space prison, like you said, Dark Matter, even Superman. It's like, that's like the first thing they come up with. It's kind of like, I mean, it's obviously it's a trope and it's fine. I'm not criticizing this comic because of it. But anyway,
right. You're right. They're using a trope, which is fine, but then when you start thinking about it, you're like, well, wait a minute. Why would she be ruined I see why she would be ruined if prisoners escaped, because then that means her prison doesn't really work. And so, right, she's going to lose her prison. But if it's just like, if we lose too many prisoners, I was like, well, then that just makes it more complicated than it.
Right, and this is one of these things I could go on for hours, and so I won't, because it is time to shut this show down for the week. If you want to reach out and talk to us about space prisons or Megalox Beta or whatever, best way to get a hold of us is hosts, that's host with an S, at talkingbirdcast.com. We are also on Twitter. There's not been a lot of news, so we haven't been tweeting much, but we are always there, day or night, and that is at Talking Birdcast. We have a website. It is talkingbirdcast.com. We have a great way for our listeners to show us a little bit of affection and not have to pay out of their pocket, and that is our Amazon affiliate link. It is www.talkingbirdcast.com/Amazon. That is www.talkingbirdcast.com/Amazon. And what you do is you just go through that little porthole, and you can buy books on proper diction, which I probably should need to do. And what it does is Amazon just kicks a little bit of your purchase back. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and it's just a great way to help us. And people have been using it, and it has been very much appreciated. It's a great way to help pay for the hosting of the show. And I think like I said, we talked about a lot, even though we didn't think we had a lot to talk about. And I'm pretty sure there's got to be some new news dropping that doesn't involve cable companies next week. So, did you have anything you wanted to add, John?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, then I think we'll say our goodbyes for Talking Birdcast. I have been Robert Zachary.
I'm still John Llewellyn.
Thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.